So we touched on this earlier because it was something that came up in my first meeting with your group, that leaving the church, and specifically a Black church and the Black community, how did that feel? Did you feel isolated because of that? As someone again said in your group, it was questioning your Blackness.
Yeah, that is definitely a thing. Now, I would say, me specifically, I did not get as much of the isolation aspect of it. And I think part of it is because when I left, I was older, and also my family was not like, dogmatic in that way, right?
Okay, so good.
Yeah. So I mean, like, how Episcopals roll. They're Christian light, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. It's more so like, hey, mom was one, grandma was one, grandpa was one, etc., etc. So that's how it is. So like, I was not like alienated. I was not like, excommunicated or anything like that, because
kicked out of the family.
Yeah. That didn't happen to me.
Good.
But I know people who were in stricter environments who ended up like, coming out and say, yeah, I'm atheist. I can't really rectify belief any longer, etc., etc. And then, they decided to leave, and they still don't have like any type of communication, or they have like a very bad communication with their family. Matter of fact, I just started a new job this week.
Oh, congratulations.
And thank you. And I was meeting with one of the people who were training me, and we all had lunch, me and another young lady and another young man. And he told us that because he's queer, his family no longer deals with him because of their religion. And I thought, because like, I think that like one of my colleagues asked, because he said that he was originally from Texas, but he's in Chicago now. Do you go back to Texas often to go see your family? And he said no, because, and then that's the reason why. Yeah. And I found out so, and I mean, and this particular person that, we were talking with was Latino. Which is like the second largest ethnicity in the United States. The United States that happens to be religious. African Americans are number one, but they're a close second, right? So it was sad in me to hear that, and I heard other people who happened to be Black that was still in the closet with their family because they knew that if they came out as atheist or agnostic or questioning or even a non, right, that says that, I may still believe, but I don't want to go to church anymore because I don't like the institution of religion, they would be excommunicated. They would be, treated as a pariah. Yeah. Because they no longer are within that purview. And I know that, and I think that part of this happens to be with our indoctrination and how religion, especially Christianity, has been placed in African Americans in the United States, that often our identity as a race has been linked to our identity, when it comes to belief. Yeah. And a lot of times, and even like yesterday, the pastor brought up, the organization of the civil rights movement meetings normally happening in churches.
In church, right.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, of course, like, since I wasn't one of the debaters, I wanted to tell him, I said, yeah, but like when it came to the network of churches that happened to be Black in the United States at the time, the majority of them did not support the civil rights movement. The majority of them did not.
Black churches.
Right. Black churches did not participate. A lot of them demonized Dr. King.
Really interesting. Okay.
Yes, they did. He was not. Matter of fact, if you were to poll Dr. King while he was alive versus now, like, of course, like a lot of people look at him as like, a very poignant like leader within that movement.
Sure. Yeah.
But at the same time, but during the time that he was, doing his organizational and civil and social justice work, he was not popular at all. It's like, his polling would have been like right around 30%. And the reason being is because, like, if you were a participant, and especially loud about your participation within the civil rights movement within the 50s and the 60s, you were targeted. I mean, like, yeah, you were targeted. I mean, like, today there is the Civil Rights Museum that's in Alabama. I want to say Birmingham, Alabama, is across the street from the 16th Street Baptist Church. That was bombed in the 50s because that was a meeting place of African Americans who happened to be part of the Southern Christian League, and also SNCC, and others who were supporting the civil rights movement. There was a movie called Four Little Girls.
Oh yeah.
And it was about
I know the story too of the four little girls. Yeah,
and it was about that specific church. They rebuilt it since then. It's still there, but it's across the street from the museum I was telling you about. But because like churches and other and the Ku Klux Klan going to people's homes and throwing Molotov cocktails and burning crosses on their lawns and basically doing this whole area of violence towards people who happen to stand up against policies that were targeting African Americans at that time. I mean, like, a lot of churches would speak out against, like, hey, basically you need to just go ahead and just, like, put your head down and just, like, deal with what we're dealing with, and don't push the envelope. And but like now, if you do talk to, especially like a lot of Black pastors and other Black folk who happen to be like Christian, they talk about like how like the church was like this like gleaming beacon, and all the churches were standing in solidarity together in order to exact change, and that's just not true. It's not. Yeah.
No, so that's actually really interesting. So you're not saying that they didn't necessarily agree with what he wanted to have happen. Like they weren't disagreeing with the ultimate consequences. Consequences is the wrong word. The ultimate change that he was looking for. But in that process, as we've seen throughout human history, nothing ever gets accomplished smoothly. There's usually a lot of struggle. And if you're alive during that struggle, it may be very bad for you. It's great for your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren. They'll have a much better life. But if you're the one in the crosshairs, like the four little girls, all the various bombings and lynchings and all these sort of things, unfortunately, that has to happen. It is the sense of this is how humans work. That negative and bad and just horrible tragedy has to go on for the next group to come out of it somewhat unscathed, and it starts to weather it down where it's okay, it's not a problem now. But you're right. So I could see why, you're right. Why it's not like we want, I'm sure there's Black communities like, we don't want this to continue, but at the same time, we don't want to get bombed.
Exactly.
So which is the lesser of the two evils?
Yeah, exactly.
I'd rather live today and live tomorrow, have my kids grow up alive.
Yeah.
Even though I hate what's going on. That's a terrible position to be in, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's kind of like, okay, I know this devil, right? It's the devil
you do. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and so I'm going to move and work and behave in the way in order for me to be able to survive. Yeah. Because this is the way of things. So I get it. I completely understand it, but it's ahistorical. So so like this whole thing about linking pride in one's race and ethnicity towards their belief systems, is fallacious as best. I don't, and especially because this is not a popular sentiment amongst other races, but it is with African Americans and Black folk, especially now that we see since colonization of and colonialism versus, specifically in the African continent, and how like especially when it comes to like the evangelical ties,
yeah,
that, you know, it has become so ingrained now into, you know, societies, even though you still have a very large Muslim population, and you still have like a population of, you know, people who happen to live in the live on the African continent, that may still, like, you know, adhere to some of their old ways that their ancestors did.
mm-hmm.
But, you know, you do have a large contingency of, you know, Christians that
Yeah.
have been introduced
Sure.
to, you know, to this particular, like, you know, prosperity doctrine,
Mm-hmm.
liberation ministry work or whatever. I would say in the past, like, you know, 50 years, that has basically just taken off like a firework
Yeah.
in the continent. And it's interesting to see, because the more poor the area,
Yeah.
the higher their religious adherence, especially when it comes to Christianity, it is. And it so is in line with what's here, because when it comes to, like I said, you know, poverty, wealth share, health, like all the statistics, all the social determinants of health that matter to human beings, African Americans are on the bottom, except for our belief in God.
Right.
And you
Yeah.
would think, and you would think that if we are at a 79 to 80% identifying, you know, according to Pew Research, of, you know, Christianity, and you ask whatever you want in Jesus' name, and he will give it unto you, because, like, that's what, you know, the pastor's wife, I brought that up to her yesterday. But, you know, I said, Jesus said you can ask whatever you want in the name, and God will give it to you. And
Yeah.
she said, well, be it his will. I said, so it's not the will for African Americans to prosper? Because according to the Bible, it also says that he said, brethren, I will it that ye prosper as your soul prospers. So as your belief system becomes more deepened and rooted, the natural prosperity should match. But a lot of times we are looking at how it's showing up in reality.
Yeah.
And what is being preached versus what is being seen are two different things.
I agree. Yeah. And Larry just sort of seconds your point. The religious prey on people that are in their lowest and most desperate state.
That's
and
right.
You know, and part of it I understand. I was talking to someone not too long ago. Oh, because we're talking about this the flood in Texas, and how people will, in times of grief, they will lean into their belief, which I've always been like, I'm going to give you a total pass if that's what helps you get up tomorrow morning because your family has died. Whatever it takes, it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't really care anyways, but if that's what it takes, fine. But at the same time, the more insidious part of that is when people are at their lowest, someone comes in there to sort of insert religion where there was none before. And you could argue that they genuinely think they're doing good. But it's like, I always kind of like, if that's the person you have to get, is the person who's at their wit's end, at their lowest point, at their most desperate, and they're grasping for any straw, you know, is like, is it really valuable, or are you just taking advantage of people as a manipulation?
Right.
You know, we would probably argue one side versus others, but it's a very common thing. And like you said, poor communities all over the world are usually very religious, very religious, far more than other. And I'm sure there's a lot of different pieces and parts of that. Obviously, education is less in poor areas than it is in more wealthy areas, right?
Yeah.
And as education, you get further away from that. The more educated, the less religious you go.
Right.
Correlation doesn't always equal causation, but there's definitely some things there that make sense, right?
Exactly.